Crouch.
Ladies and gentlemen, I too would like to thank you for your service over the last many days and your attentiveness to the evidence that's been presented. I hope that we, and myself and the staff here, have presented the evidence in a reasonable and professional manner with as much dignity as we could. I hope you noticed right out of the gate, with the defendant's argument that the only confession he's even disputed was April 6th at Agent Boyd. What about right after Agent Boyd, when he's in the vehicle with Trevor Daniels? Trevor Daniels not asking him any questions at all, none. So how is that a false confession? And y'all listen to 13 clips from Trevor Daniels' vehicle. 13. No questions asked. These were just spontaneous statements made by the defendant, all claiming to either have killed his son or claiming how honest Alex is, that he's a good boy, he wouldn't lie, and he told him not to lie. These are unsolicited. Nobody's asking him questions. So you know they're not false. There's nobody there asking him anything. They're just listening. What else does he say as they're driving to McElhaney Road? I want all the money that's been donated to go to the funeral expenses. My dad is going to kill me. My dad is going to kill me. And the detective does speak and reassures him, we're not going to let that happen. Why would his dad want to kill him? Why would the defendant's own father want to kill him? Because he has killed. He committed murder. He killed his own son. And he's now in fear that his father will be mad, and rightly so. But all of those comments, all of them, unsolicited, no questions asked. They're just him talking. You know, false confession when someone's just talking. Let's go a little further in the night. He then acknowledges that he has lied about the location of the body and gives a written statement, a written and signed statement, confessing again to the murder of his own son. How is that false? How is that coerced? He freely and voluntarily does these things. Now, go forward to the next day. The man requests to use the phone. He's not forced to use the phone. He requests to use the phone and calls the TBI and tells them he wants to help bring closure. If you're giving false confessions, why do you want to help bring closure? What he's doing, two things. He's still fishing for information to see what has been learned in this case. Why? Number one goal of the defendant, conceal, 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 conceal. He wants no one to see what he has done to this child. But he's the one that picks up the phone, mind you, for the second time, because the first time he picks up the phone is to initiate the false report. Go forward 2 days from the false report, and he picks up the phone at his own request and calls the TBI and has them come up there and drive him out to the command center and into Love's. And he admits again, I've killed my son. I've killed my son. I've thrown him off a bridge. How's that false? How's that coerced? He is the one that initiated. He is then taken over near the command post where his father is present. His own father gets in the vehicle with him. He tells his own father, I killed my son. I killed Alex. I beat him. Is that coerced? Did his father coerce him now? When you have nothing else to argue, you argue false confession. When you have nothing else to argue, you argue false confession. And that's what the defense is doing. That's what they've been doing. Think about how badly they berated Jeannie Jones, who took the stand, came forward on her own, made a call saying what she observed. And Mr. Locker wanted so badly to get her to say she didn't see somebody there. He tried every little trick he could to get her to say she was looking in the woods.
He can't imply that counsel's using tricks.
Counsel will refrain from trying to imply that there's any sort of deception or any sort of effort or logic on the part of the opposing counsel. But ladies and gentlemen, again, argument of counsel is not evidence. It's just their explanation to you about what they believe the proof has shown. You will recall the testimony and you will recall the questions that were asked and the answers that were given.
He stood here and cross-examined Miss Jones to the fullest extent he could to try to get her to shift away from the fact that she saw the defendant and he was wearing red shorts and a colorful shirt. That's indisputed. Now, the coloring on the shirt, red, white, and blue, black, bright green, that's debated. The color of the shorts, red, absolute. He didn't even ask about the color of the shorts. And guess what? Guess what the defendant is wearing on April 6th when he gives his first confession? You see it, you saw him in the video. He pulls them up. He's asked, what shorts were you wearing when this occurred? He lifts his belt, pulls the red shorts. These. How's that coerced? How is that coerced when you just show the shorts you're wearing? It's a very simple question. Who would be coerced by asking, Ray, what color tie are you wearing? Navy. He didn't have to say these are the shorts I'm wearing, but he did. What shirt were you wearing? The alien shirt. It says, I believe. Did you wash it? Was the question from Agent Ward. Yes. Okay. Where was the shirt found? In the laundry room. In the dryer. Confirming it had been washed. There's no false confession. Let's go back to what Alex said in one of the CAC interviews. This is a hoax. This whole thing was a hoax, and it was. A hoax that family had been forced into perpetrating forward out of fear of the defendant. Alex was threatened to be beaten and killed. And Mr. Mitchell wants to talk about what Alex said in his statement to the Child Advocacy Center, but don't forget his own father was there with him, standing right outside the door. And just 2 days before, I've been told you will be beaten or I will kill you if you talk about this. An 8-year-old boy. What are you going to do if you're an 8-year-old boy and the man that you saw murder your brother is standing outside of the door waiting to get you after you finish this Child Advocacy Center interview? What are you going to say? I didn't do anything. But Alex does eventually talk. And it is untrue that he was interrogated 50 times, as suggested. He was questioned twice at the Child Advocacy Center, and you heard testimony that he had therapy from a doctor, not interrogations from law enforcement. See, that's kind of the thing. If you don't pay really close attention, you might be hoaxed or tricked or believe that he had actually been interrogated 50 times by law enforcement. But that's not the testimony in this case. He was questioned by a forensic interviewer at the Child Advocacy Center 2 times. Everything else was therapy sessions with his doctor, which we know nothing about. He wasn't interrogated. Let's not forget that this entire story about moving the coffee table over to the door, that's not something investigators came up with. That's what the defendant said happened. That the table was moved over to the door, that Alex got on the table, that Joe Clyde got on the table, unlocked the padlock, and you know the rest of it, put the key back on the mantel, hid the lock in the box, moved the table back. Well, let's talk about this. Would any 5-year-old have the competency and foresight to return the table back to the center of the living room to conceal that they had escaped the house? I don't think so. I think that's planning to conceal your escape. If you're going to put the key back on the mantel and then move the table back to the center of the room, I don't think any 5-year-old could do that. But we know Joe Clyde can't. I mean, his global developmental delay. He's not the normal 5-year-old. He is struggling as a 5-year-old. He can't do a lot of things that other 5-year-olds can do. But he definitely doesn't have the mental forethought to be able to say, okay, if I want to get out of this house without my parents knowing it, I'm going to move this table back over here where they don't know that I've escaped when they wake up in the morning. He didn't do that. But that's the story of the defendant. It's a hoax. A hoax. They called 911 knowing that it was a hoax. And just to be clear, in order for you to believe that hoax, they wanted to set it up that way. The defendant says in his statement, I put the lock in the box. He's saying, I put the key back on the mantle and I put the lock in the toy box. That's what the defendant says. That's not coerced from him. That's his story. How would Joey Boyd or Agent Faulkner know to say to the defendant or coerce him into saying that he put the key back on the mantle or put the lock back in the box? They wouldn't know to say that. That rings of truthfulness. Why? Because that's where the lock was found, and that's where the key was found. The shirt found in the washing machine, in the dryer. If you'll go to the first slide. You've already seen this. This is Alex and Joe Clyde getting off the bus on April the 3rd. Now they're getting off the bus at the end of the driveway. Aunt Joyce is waiting for them. Not their parents, Aunt Joyce. Now, Aunt Joyce is waiting for them at the end of the driveway, walks them back up to the house. These kids play outside. Presumably they play outside and in the yard all the time. You heard no testimony that a dog ever hit anywhere in the house. But the defense wants to make you think, well, a dog didn't hit in the house or around the house, so nobody was killed. Because that's not actually the testimony you heard about dog handling. It's presumed that the scent of the folks that live in that house will be all around it. A dog will not be tracking on the house where the person lives. I mean, that's just common sense. Those kids walked right there, April 3rd. Joe Clyde's scent was being left going up the driveway, but a dog didn't hit on the driveway either. That's because they don't want you to understand how tracking dogs actually work. So because there was no hit in the yard, that means nothing. The scent of the resident is presumed to be there. It is there. They live there. So chip away, chip away, chip away. Next slide.
So it was a padlock. Okay. Now those doors, on which door was the padlock? The back door when we came in.
That's April 4th to Agent Kennard. It was padlocked. He didn't say, oh, I don't know if it was padlocked. It was padlocked. Now, is this a coerced statement as well? Is this a false confession? No. This is the defendant saying, hey, we padlocked this door. And you know what? The evidence has shown that Joe Clyde previously did leave that house. But that's why they started putting the padlock up, so he couldn't get out. And you heard testimony that since they had begun using the padlock on that door, Joe Clyde had never gotten out again. You also heard testimony that he never got out at night. He never left that house at night. Except on this occasion. And isn't it also odd that on this occasion it was raining, thundering, and lightning, and he wanted to go out at night on this night? No. Because you've already heard testimony from Jessica Donnerstag and the defendant. He didn't like loud noises, and he did not like playing in the rain. Did not. So he's going to go to this great length of moving all this stuff around to go outside in a thunderstorm and rainstorm? No. No.
Does he like playing out in the rain? No.
No, he doesn't. But yet on a night when it's thundering and raining, a child, a 5-year-old with global developmental delay, who scores in the first percentile of his gross motor skills, elects to escape the house? No. And Mr. Mitchell was right. We need to exclude reasonable theories. The theory that he left this house that night is not reasonable because it didn't happen. He left that house in the arms of his own father after his father had slammed him into that coffee table. A noise so loud that it woke everyone in the house up. Everyone. Alex comes out of his bedroom and what does he see? Crouched on the other side of the living room, Noah and Aunt Joyce. How do you corroborate that? He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. That's what Noah says the next morning. As 2 independent eyewitnesses are filling out a missing person questionnaire. Think about that. The defense just told you in their closing because there's a house full of law enforcement telling everybody in the house that Joe is dead, which is why Noah asked, is he dead, is he dead, is he dead? That's untrue. Factually untrue. The testimony from every witness that got up here said that TEMA and the Murray County Search and Rescue Team, Brent Morris, Chad Bailey, were there to fill out a missing person questionnaire. Not a dead person questionnaire. It's a missing person, a missing child. People were responding from all over Middle Tennessee to search for a missing child, not a dead child. Nobody had said that child was dead until Aunt Joyce did. Not one law enforcement agent or person that took this stand testified they had told anybody in that house that baby Joe Clyde Daniels, was dead on that morning. That is an inference that the defense wants you to make because they want to explain away why Noah would say spontaneously, not coerced, spontaneously, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead, to be confirmed by Aunt Joyce, which puts him in her arms and says, yes, baby, he's dead. Don't buy the hoax that the defendant started spinning on April the 4th. That's the next slide. Go ahead.
We found the key, we found the lock.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. The lock was thrown into the toys. The key was on the mantle, oddly enough.
Oddly enough, the key was on the mantle. This isn't a coerced interview. This is Agent Kennard on the night of April 4th in the defendant's home, sitting next to him, asking him questions. He wasn't being forced or coerced. He's saying, oh, yeah, we found the lock. Right. Yeah, because you put it there. We later learned. Next slide.
Where do you put it?
It was on the mantle. I put it on the mantle.
Okay. Is it just sitting out open on the mantle?
Yeah.
I'll put it on the mantle. Next slide.
I have a very snappy temper, so I've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
I've regretted all of it.
Sure. With Joe specifically?
Yeah.
So that's April the 4th with Agent Kamara. So move forward 2 days, and you've seen the video of the defendant. Why did I kill my son? Because he snapped. He went into a rage, and he killed his son.
Is it reasonable to think that he could get out of the house without anybody hearing anything?
That door is right next to our room, so we can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And normally when someone opens the door and closes the door, we can hear it, but
Again, the defense says we'll exclude all reasonable theories. There you go. He just excluded it for you. That door is right next to their bedroom, and when somebody goes in and out of it, they can hear it. But they didn't hear anything because why? The defendant was up. He's the one that went out the door with the dead child in his arms. We are excluding these theories because they're a hoax.
But I did check it before I went later in the evening.
All right, now this is a different interview. This is when he's riding with Detective McCartney and Detective Lovett. And again, he tells them, I did check the lot. I checked the lot. So we're doing two things simultaneously. We're showing you, one, that the defendant is lying when compared to his confessions. But two, we're also excluding the theory that the door was somehow unlocked and that the child escaped. We've crushed that theory that it was unlocked and he got out of the house. And unless it was unlocked and he got out of the house, then everything else that Mr. Mitchell told you about these possibilities is impossible. Kidnapping, car running over him, impossible. Because he couldn't get out of the house. The only way he could get out of the house that night was by the hands of his father. Because the door was locked and they checked it, as they did every night. It's habitual, they checked it. Why did they put the padlock up? Why did it become habitual? Because they didn't want him to get out.
And he slams doors. He did not slam that door.
When he goes out that door, he slams it. But he didn't slam that door and it didn't wake him up because it didn't happen. Because the only time Joe Clyde Daniels went out that door was in the arms of his father.
Does he ever get up in the night and wander around inside the house?
Yes.
He does?
Yes, he does do that.
And you guys hear him when he does that, or?
Yeah, because he will go to like the pots and pans and play with it. I play with the canned goods.
You heard the testimony of Miss Donnerstag. With his global developmental delay, Joe Clyde could do some things, but a lot of things he couldn't do. But he was not, and I think I specifically asked her the question, is he stealthy? And she said no. He's not stealthy. He doesn't do anything quietly. And in the words of his father, yeah, he gets up in the middle of the night some, and we can hear him because he'll be playing with his toys or banging around pots and pans. But yet they want you to think that he pushed the table all the way across the living room, up to a door, through the toys, by the way, through the toys. I guess he picked all the toys up. Climbs up, finds the key, unlocks the padlock, puts the key back on the mat, then pushes the table back to the center of the living room. Nope. Not reasonable.
So there's never been a time where y'all have forgotten to lock it or just left it open for just a little bit by mistake?
I usually check to make sure it's locked.
Did you check it last night?
No, but she did.
And there you go. It's a double system there. I check it every night, but if I don't, she does. They're communicating with each other, at least that's the story they're telling. We check these locks, we check these locks, we check these locks.
So I don't know how. But I usually would have heard something because I just slammed the door and I didn't hear that, so.
again, a second separate interview altogether, and again he says, Joe Clyde, he slams doors. This entire position they've adopted that he somehow got out of the house, it's baseless. It's absolutely baseless. He was killed by his father and taken out of the house.
Alex. Who is Alex? Alex is Joe's, is Crystal's son, my stepson. Okay. So.
Okay. I wrote this down just so I could get Mr. Mitchell correct on it. He begins by saying that Agent Boyd knew certain information about Alex from the Child Advocacy Center interview, so he was confronting Joseph at this confession on April the 6th. But that's not correct. How do we know that's not correct? Because Agent Boyd was not at the Child Advocacy Center interview on April the 5th, the day before. So keep in mind, the defense is saying, okay, the TBI is injecting information into this interview, and he's creating a false confession from information provided by the TBI. Agent Boyd was not at the Child Advocacy Center. He didn't hear anything Alex had to say. Not only that, play that clip again.
Alex. Who is Alex? Alex is Joe's, is Crystal's son, my stepson. Okay. So.
Agent Boyd said, who is Alex? Agent Boyd doesn't even know who Alex is at this point in time. Who is Alex? So what they're trying to get you to believe is that Agent Boyd injected all this false information, and that's how he adopted a false confession. Agent Boyd wasn't at the Child Advocacy Center. He has no clue who Alex is or what Alex said. There you go. There was no false information injected into that. You can hear Agent Boyd in your own ears say, who is Alex? Next slide.
Alex is a witness, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
He saw everything.
Alex is a witness, and I agree with Mr. Mitchell. That's kind of posed as a question. And Agent Boyd says, yeah, I hear you. He doesn't say, yes, he's a witness, and he's ratted you out. He doesn't say that. He just says, yeah, I hear you. Play that again.
Alex is a witness, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
He saw everything.
He saw everything. He's fishing for information again. He already asked, whose phone left the house? He wants to know. He wants to know what Agent Boyd knows so he can adopt a story to get out of trouble, to conceal, to keep them from finding the body. He saw everything, right? He's wanting to fish Agent Boyd. As Agent Boyd testifies, he said, there's always two sides to an interview. There's what I know and there's what the suspect knows. And we're always engaged in that, trying to figure out what the other one knows. That's the testimony of Agent Boyd. So, in the beginning of this interview, the defendant is fishing to see what Agent Boyd knows. But as it comes out, we know that Alex actually is a witness. And remember, Alex hadn't ratted out the defendant. He didn't say anything at the Child Advocacy Center because his dad was standing right outside the room.
And what'd you tell Alex? That if he would tell anybody else, wouldn't beat him.
So what
That's
did
what
you
he said,
tell him?
wasn't it?
See? That's what he said, is that if he told anybody, I was going to beat him. That's what he said. He's asking Agent Boyd. That's what Alex said, right? Well, Agent Boyd wouldn't know because he doesn't know who Alex is. He's not had an encounter with him. Go ahead.
What did Alex do to him when he saw
He was,
what happened to
he was
baby Joe?
he was just watching. He didn't do anything.
He was just watching.
Does he know the baby Joe's dead?
Yeah.
Alex does. Did he say that?
No.
Did you tell him?
No.
He just saw.
Yeah.
Did he say anything to you about it?
No.
Has he asked you where baby Joe is?
No.
You just told him if you told anybody about it, just beat him?
Yeah.
How is that coerced? How is that coerced? Do you see anybody yelling or screaming? That Agent Boyd is just... What did Alex see? He saw everything. Alex did see everything. The defendant is admitting that Alex saw everything. Alex is the corroborating witness, who, by the way, was threatened by the defendant. Now, I didn't think we were going to have to address this again, but I put this slide in here because I had a hunch it might come up again. How many witnesses testified that that report from Gilliam Hollow Road was searched multiple times, but yet the defense has argued again today that nobody did anything on Gilliam Hollow Road? You've got the documents as an exhibit. 3 separate searches on Gilliam Hollow Road. But they're trying to say, oh, but they didn't do anything. They didn't do enough. 3 times, and it was unfounded. They're saying these boots were stolen. Well, that was the second report from Gilliam Hollow Road. The first one came in that there was footprints in the barn. They went and checked. Detective McCartney, there were no children's footprints. There were goat prints. And the caller wasn't happy. They called back. A pair of boots had been stolen. That time, they sent the captain over there with the crew and it searched. What did they find? No evidence of a child being anywhere. None. But why is the defense trying to ingrain in you that law enforcement didn't do their job when we've proven over and over and over again that they did? And then the caller complained one more time. And when they first responded, she was asleep. Wasn't even home. But they still went and still searched again. There was 3 searches at Gilliam Hollow Road. 3. And, you know, the way the questions were asked and the inferences were drawn from the defense through some of the witnesses. Remember we were discussing logic and reasonableness? These reports from Gilliam Hollow, just think about how actually logical this is. They exclude each other. Because the lady at Gilliam Hollow said things happened 3 days in a row at her house. And all the way down here, 12 miles away in a different county, we're in Dixon County, all here. This is the Humphreys County line right here. On the same day, a 4-year-old at this house sees something, somebody in pajamas and shoes. Well, those exclude each other because if somehow Joe Clyde had gotten out, he wasn't in 2 places at the same time. But nonetheless, law enforcement did go here. And you heard testimony of the report and investigation they did when they went there. Not only did a deputy go there, others did as well to search. Both of these places were searched. So why are they still arguing that law enforcement didn't do anything? I don't understand that. And you should be questioning that too. Why are they trying to convince you that law enforcement didn't do anything at either one?
Objection, Your Honor. The only thing we asked about was doing a dog search. We never said they didn't do anything. Only they didn't do a dog search.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will remember what the evidence was and the questions that were asked, because you are the determiners of the facts in this case, and so argument, but both sides get to argue what they believe the evidence showed. And I'm overruling the objection simply because of the fact that both sides are entitled to argue what they think the evidence has shown and the inferences that you can draw from it. But you are the sole judges of the facts in this case, and you are the ones who should remember what the evidence showed or did not show. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, I'm arguing this because, as Mr. Mitchell said, the state, we're excluding these reasonable theories. It's not reasonable to believe that Joe Clyde Daniels was here and on the same day here. It's not only unreasonable, it's impossible. Impossible. It's unreasonable to think that Joe Clyde Daniels, at 5 years old, traveled northbound across Highway 70, a major traffic area in Dixon County, went to Gilliam Hollow Road, stole a pair of tennis shoes, snuck into the barn, camped out, moved a horse blanket, woke up, went back south. By the way, going south, crossing Highway 70 again, takes him directly into the command center where hundreds of people were gathered. Hundreds. So it's impossible and unreasonable to even suggest that that's what occurred here. Walking either one of these routes would take him right through the command center, all the way over here, where at this point he's changed shoes again? No. No. He didn't go to Gilliam Hollow. He didn't go to Humphreys County because he was murdered by that man sitting at that table. But the defendant, started this hoax. He started it. He initiated it with that 911 call.
That boy is not as weak as people think. That boy is a strong boy.
That boy, ladies and gentlemen, is his 5-year-old son. His name is Joe Clyde Daniels. That boy is someone who the defendant should have been caring for, not hurting. The defendant to this day, let me back up. We don't know where Joe Clyde's body is because the defendant has concealed the location of that away. Joe Clyde Daniels. We know the defendant questioned, leading up to his death, whether he was even the father. How do we know that? Because he was searching paternity, ways to test paternity without the mother knowing. You can see that on his Google search tab. That boy. That boy.
Hey, Joe. What is it that you're wanting? Hey, Joe, look at me, buddy. Look, I don't have an apple. I'm so sorry. Do you want me to bring you an apple on Thursday? Are you so mad at me because I don't have apples? Hey, be nice. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Don't be so mad. We're going to play a fun game instead, okay? No, you want an apple more than anything? Be nice, okay?
Joe Clyde won it now. And I'm almost finished. And I am mindful of your time. But this is important. And this is our one opportunity. You can see the determination on his face and the disappointment when he asked for an apple. Man, this is a case that'll give you the black rings under your eyes. So bear with me. I ask you on day one, almost every one of you, how would you feel if you were at Walmart or a water park or at home and you noticed that your child was missing? And pretty much the unanimous answer was panic. I think that would be the normal feeling of any parent, panic. What we see from the defendant is not panic, but pretending. How do we know it's pretending? When he leaves his house, he drives to Love's on the morning of April 4th, all the way to Love's. He knows Joe Clyde didn't walk 9 miles to a truck stop. He knows that. This guy isn't panicking. He's calling Nashville State Community College. But they want you to think they argued to you. He was searching for a son like any person would do. No, you all know. You know what panic is. And you know what it's like when you're wondering where your child is. And you ain't calling Nashville State Community College. And you ain't downloading apps on your phone to get your transcripts in W-2. That's not panic. That's pretending, and lack of concern, and lack of emotion, and lack of panic. That's what the defendant did. When I asked Agent Burkhardt about the call to Nashville State, Mr. Locker cross-examined and said, well, he's got a right to earn a living for his family. Sure he does. But there were hundreds of volunteers that came to Dixon County on April the 4th and gave up that day's wages to actually search for Joe Clyde Daniels, to do a real search. Not just slowly driving down Garner's Creek, but to do a real search by land, by water, by road, by UTV. Real people, really invested. But he's calling Nashville State Community College because he's panicked for his son? I won't ever see another apple without thinking about Joe Clyde Daniels. He stomped his foot because he wanted an apple. Stomp your foot. Don't buy into a hoax. The state has the burden of proof in this case, and as I told you in my opening statement, we will honor that. We're committed to proving beyond a reasonable doubt. But I also ask you to follow the law from day one. The law does not require us to produce the body of Joe Clyde Daniels. That's not the law. Please do not reward the defendant for his successful and continued concealment of this child's life.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is noon. What I'm going to have to read to you in that charge is going to take a considerable period of time for me to do so. I think it would be appropriate now for us to break for lunch. I would just remind you that, as I have previously instructed you, you should not discuss this case, even these closing arguments among yourselves. You should not discuss any aspect of the testimony that you've heard. Do not start deliberations or do anything like that. Just enjoy your lunch, and then as soon as we come back from lunch, I will give you the final charge, and after I've given you the final charge, we will select the 4 alternates that will be discharged from service, and then the remaining 12 will go back and begin their deliberations. All right? And at this point, we're going to ask you to go ahead and step across. Mr. Etheridge, were you given the charge, or are you going to put that on the screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, just for your information, the jurors are all going to be given their own copy of this 30-something page charge to go along with me when I read. But for the benefit of everyone else, I think some people are at the council table and so forth, maybe looking on the computer. We're going to have that charge demonstrated on this large screen TV so that anyone else can follow along with us as well. We will be in recess Let's make it until 1:15 for lunch, and then we will come back and begin the charge of the jury. 1:15.
All rise. This court is in recess for 1:15.
Portside Cafe up the street in that little triangle. Or you've got the Country View Market, they make great sandwiches.
Oh, inside the market?
Yeah, they've got a deli, you just go up there and on a piece of paper like this right here.